Today, we're talking about the exposure triangle. Hey guys, welcome to the video. I hope you're doing well. If you're new here, my name is Mike. If you are a returning viewer, my name is still Mike, but you would have known that already. So I mentioned a few weeks ago in my fall walk video that I might start filming some photography tutorials. This is episode 1 of that series. Now, over the winter it can be a little tough to get out with the drone and shoot stuff just due to the wind and cold and snow, and of course the dew point can be far too low to allow me to fly safely. I am hoping to release no more than one of these a month, and I will try to maintain the usual content for the rest of the month. I do of course reserve the right to release a few photography videos if the weather is really bad. I do have a few videos planned already, and I've decided to start right at the very basics. So without further ado, let's get into proper exposure. Exposure is controlled by 3 things: ISO, shutter speed, and aperture. The easiest way to think about this is an equilateral triangle. If you change one side, you need to change the other 2 to keep the proper shape. Now, there are times that you may not want to properly expose an image. You may want to under or overexpose, and we can talk about those reasons in future videos. So let's cover ISO first. In spite of what some YouTube photographers say, ISO is not a word. It is an acronym for International Organization for Standardization. The folks who set the standards manufacturers have to follow. This includes organizations like CSA and ANSI. Anyhow, I digress. The number 100, 200, 400 lets you know the relative sensitivity of your sensor or film. Each step up or down will either double the sensitivity of your camera or it will cut it in half. So ISO 200 is twice as sensitive as ISO 100 and half as sensitive as ISO 400. Pretty simple to see. Each different setting is half or double of the previous or next setting. We'll cover some of the pros and cons to various ISO settings in another video. Just as a side note though, if you're shooting film and you set the ISO and forget about it, if you change it midway through a roll, you will either ruin the rest of the roll of film or at least the single frame that you change the ISO on. Film is processed at the setting that is printed on the canister unless you tell them otherwise. There is no way to develop each frame individually. You can, however, push or pull process an entire roll of film, but that's a discussion for a whole different day. Alright, so we have our ISO set. Let's move on to shutter speed. Just like it sounds, this is the speed at which your shutter will activate. It is usually measured in fractions of a second, but if you're shooting in low light or at night, it can even be measured in seconds and sometimes minutes or hours. Once again, each step up or down will double or half the amount of light that you let into your camera. This is also pretty easy to see. 1/125th is obviously half of 1/250th, and 1/500 is obviously double 1/250th. We'll discuss the reason to speed up or slow down your shutter speed in future videos, but for now, let's presume that we're looking for a properly exposed shot of a static subject with even lighting. Now for the confusing one, aperture. This setting opens or closes the hole or aperture in your lens, changing the amount of light it lets through. Same rule applies here. Each setting is half or double the one right next to it. So f8 is half the size of f5.6 and double the size of f11. Confusing, right? 8 times 2 does not equal 11, it equals 16, but f16 is actually double the size of f11. Another thing that's really confusing is the bigger the number, the smaller the hole. I still don't really understand the math, but it has something to do with the circular area and the way the light moves through the hole. It's a long and confusing formula, and thankfully, as photographers, we don't need to know it. All we need to wrap our heads around is that each setting is half or double the the previous setting, even if the math doesn't appear to work out right. So, that's the basic principles of the exposure triangle. If you change one setting, you need to change the other two as well to maintain proper exposure. Let's look at a really quick example. Here's a picture of a red pepper. As you can see, it's properly exposed. You'll notice on the bottom left corner the camera settings for this picture. Now if I change the shutter speed, it's overexposed like this. If I adjust the aperture and ISO, it is once again properly exposed. It just took a little more time to shoot. So now we shoot it at a faster shutter speed and once again improper exposure. This time it's underexposed. But if I change the other settings, it is once again properly exposed, just at a faster shutter speed. Now there are reasons you may want to slow down your shutter speed or really crank it up. But for the most part, those would be artistic decisions and we won't cover them in this video. So hopefully I provided you with some value. If I did, consider subscribing if that's something you're into. On your way out of the video, if you don't mind, tap or click on one of the thumbs, preferably the one pointed in the upwards direction. It lets me and YouTube know I'm doing a good job. If you want more pictures and a few short videos from time to time, you can follow Gradient Imaging on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. But until next time, bye-bye.